Welcome to the Principality of Nevendon. Regular visitors to this beautiful part of the UK may be wondering what's happened to all the lovely scenery. Instead of postcard perfect images of the Principalities rail network, here we are gazing, rather thoughtfully, at something that looks more like a train wreck than a model railway. Hardly something that screams out to be posted back home with "Wish you were here" scribbled across its back. Well, rather than immediately providing you with screens full of eye candy, you're instead going to be first taken through some of the processes required to create extensions to the railway network, such as this branch line into Nevendon Sands, a popular seaside town that's situated upon the Principalities' east coast. As you can see, our tour begins with the baseboards and overhead lighting panels already in place. The boards are a mixture of 3 and 6mm ply. Experts, however, do advise the use of 9mm ply instead, but as this is intended to be an exhibition layout, weight issues far outweigh any worries about the wood possibly warping at some point in the future. Okay, so what is going to be built upon these boards? Well, Nevendon Sands is not only a seaside resort, but also a source of china clay, a whitish mineral that is widely used within industries such as those involved in the production of tiles or pottery. So, the layout will need to not only feature the town's popular beaches and harbour, but also the china clay processing. Something else that will need to be considered are the ruins of an old engine house. It towers high above the town and has proven to be rather a popular film location. Plenty to do and make then. As well as using polystyrene and foam insulation, other materials such as resins will need to be employed in order to produce various things. For example, here we can see some moulds that are going to be filled with resin to create a number of walls and pillars. In the UK, it is law that walls, fences or hedges define the edge of railway property. This is for obvious safety reasons, and here the walls are going to be used to prevent visitors to Nevendon Sands from straying onto the tracks that lead into the station. Flat-packed laser cut kits, an MDF arranged marriage between IKEA and Airfix, provide a quick way of populating a layout with buildings and other accessories. Here, some kits supplied by Scenic Route Models have resulted in the production of some beach huts. These will grace one end of the sloping beach promenade that leads up to the harbour. And of course, when you want to enhance a scene like this, such that it turns into something more resembling this, then you need what's called flock. Made up of small smacks of sawdust and available in many colours and shades, flock is used extensively to add both detail and interest to a layout. Turning to the railway, some welding needs to be performed. No brightly coloured motorcyclist helmet or goggles are required though, just a blowtorch in the form of a welding iron. This, accompanied by some solder and wiring, will do the job of supplying power to the track. The engines employed at Nevendon Sands are both DCC. Thus they will require voltage supply in the region of 15 volts, rather than the 12mm commonly used upon DC layouts, where, in order for trains to be able to run at different speeds etc., power supplies have to be split up into regions, each train running within a specific region at any one time. DCC engines, however, are independently controlled, and so DCC layouts do not have to be split up into regions. Nevertheless, Nevendon Sands will be in order to allow a train's current location to be detected. Just why that is so important we will discover later on. Moulds exist for rocks as well as walls, and when filled with a lightweight plaster mixture they set pretty quickly. Once the rock has been created, it then gets painted using a technique that's known as leopard spotting. Besides being great fun to do, it's kind of messy, the results are also awesome and can be achieved literally within minutes. Sculptor mould, a sort of paper mache, is superb at filling in the gaps between rocks and also creating landscapes in its own right. It dries quickly and is not too heavy, weight being an important issue for this particular layout. Right, so whereabouts are we right now with regard to the actual build? Well, while we've been chatting away about the various tools and materials that are being used on Nevendon Sands, behind the scenes they've been being put to good use. The tide's obviously out, but other than that, the beach and promenade area of the layout is almost completed. No tourists have yet arrived, but as very little track has been laid to date, no trains have either. So, as holidaymakers are very important to the local economy, perhaps the focus should now shift away from sandy beaches and turn instead towards the railway station and its associated railway lines. The layout is 00 scale and the track is code 100, aided and abetted by just a few lengths of flexi-track. The need to know where each of the two trains are at any moment was identified earlier, and just as in the case of British Rail, current detection is going to be employed in order to do this. The track is therefore going to be split up into regions, districts if you prefer, with a current detector allocated to each one of them. When a train is detected, a signal will get passed from the detection device to an Arduino, a tiny microprocessor, which in turn sends commands to the train. These commands may be to change its speed, stop, or if it is already at a halt, start moving again. It will all depend upon a particular engine's location and status at that time, plus of course those of the other engine. Complicated stuff, but fortunately most of the programming code required by the Arduino is available completely free of charge via the web. It's called DCC+, and a quick search will result in all you need to know. There's even a number of very useful YouTube tutorials up there as well. That said, the code did still need to be extended to meet the particular requirements of Nevendon Sands, a task that was an enjoyable, interesting diversion away from mucking about with pots of glue and jars of paint. So, now that all the software is in place, it's time to pay some attention to the hardware and so start laying some track. Once laid and tested, it will need to be wired up to the various detection devices and then of course tested all over again. Testing times indeed, but the big question remains, will the wiring end up looking like spaghetti that's been spewed out by a dog, or will it all be organised and neat and tidy? Lay your bets now please. The track plan is fairly simple. Imagine someone lying in the snow creating a snow angel, and you've got the basic idea. Two lines emerging from a tunnel, one freight, one passenger, that combine to form a stretch of single line before opening back up again into two lines, one leading into the station, the other around to the China clay processing site. Now, wiring layout isn't usually that big a thing, as one circuit will usually suffice to power the trains. 12 volts in the case of the more traditional DC, while DCC, i.e. computer controlled engines, would require 15 volts. However, Nevendon Sands is a tad more complicated in that it also needs to supply power to the street lighting, 9 volts, as well as the Arduinos and signals, who each require 12 volts. Accordingly, 3 totally independent circuits, 15 volts, 12 volts and 9 volts, are going to have to be wired up, employing different coloured wires for each circuit, helping to ensure that problem solving doesn't become a mammoth issue. Once the street lighting and track had been wired up, it became possible to begin testing. More wiring will be required later, but an incremental approach like this does make testing less stressful. And, apart from some polarity issues with one of the points, which was easily solved by switching 2 wires around, the engine ran up and down the layout quite nicely. However, as you can see, one nasty did raise its ugly head. On the plans, there was no problem, but in harsh reality, there is not enough room, well, any in fact, for an engine to run in front of the China clay factory. Oops! Fortunately, a swift change of track and of course some additional wiring soon resolved this problem. At this point in the layout's construction, the engine is being controlled by a handheld controller. The requirement for Nevendon Sands, however, is that the trains be automatically run by just the Arduinos, so that is a challenge that has yet to be overcome. The cunning plan is to employ a pair of Uno Arduinos in conjunction with a single Arduino 2560. Each Uno will be responsible for monitoring the status of 2 of the 4 track sensors, continually reporting that information back to the 2560 via an I2C data link. If a section of monitored track is free, then the value of 0 will be reported. Should however the track be occupied by an engine, then the value of 1 will be sent instead. The 2560 will respond in several ways. It might change a set of points, set the signal to red rather than green, or equally it could simply start a train off on its journey or indeed bring one to a halt, each action being determined by the reported status of a track sensor. A track sensor is situated underneath each of the tracks that are inside the tunnel, another is under the line that leads into the station, whilst the fourth is below the track running into the China clay workings. The code for the UNOs is relatively simple, certainly compared to that of the 2560, which is quite a bit more involved. The 2560 has more memory on board though, and thus is better positioned to handle more processing. This is important because should a UNO linger over a calculation, the result could very well be a collision between the two trains that run in and out of Nevendon Sands. Anyway, here are some photos of the completed underboard wiring. Although admittedly it does look a bit of a mare's nest at first, and even possibly a second glance, there's truly a degree of organised chaos going on. Each wire is colour coded so that it can reflect both its purpose and current load. For example, the track, red and black wires, requires 15 volts, the Arduinos, pink and purple, and some of the lighting 12 volts, whilst a power supply of 9 volts, striped wires, is sufficient for the remaining lights. Although the patterns of the wiring do indeed look like the meanderings of a drunken spider, they have been carefully thought through, each wiring loop having its own route through the various tangles. Accordingly, should a fault such as a light failing to switch on occur, then the wiring involved can be quickly identified and the situation, hopefully, just as swiftly addressed. Okay, so we're now a month or so further on in this build, making it around 6 months in total so far. The 3 Arduinos are all chatting away to each other nicely, and the sensors are equally performing well. Accordingly, the master Arduino knows exactly where the trains are at any point in time, along with their speed and direction. It also knows the state of all the signals on the layout too, and equally how each of the points are set. Quite a bit of testing and code rewriting was required to reach this point, but now that is all completed, your patient wait for some eye candy is over. Yippee! We joined the fun aboard the Nevendon Riverai Express, which brings visitors into the coastal town that is Nevendon Sands. It's a seaside resort that boasts both sandy beaches and a harbour. At the railway station, hundreds of eager tourists leave the train, each one of them set upon consuming as much ice cream and candy floss as they possibly can. Some head straight for the beach in order to get a suntan, or maybe to take a paddle, whilst others prefer to wander along the harbour to gaze at the fishing boats and lifeboat station. A walk in the warm sunshine along the promenade at Nevendon Sands is an experience enjoyed by many. There is a bit of an incline as you make your way up from the station towards the harbour, but every little helps when you're building up an appetite for lunch. Various stalls along its length offer refreshments and the like. Then, once you reach the harbour, you can find a bake shop as well as all the clutter, lobster pots, fish nets, etc. that is usually be found around such places. Here we can see the Nevendon Express coming into town with another load of visitors. It's a regular train service whose ebb and flow almost matches that of the tides. There's even a winter service, although obviously less trains run and passengers then tend to be inhabitants of Nevendon Sands rather than tourists popping down for the day. Our day here has just begun though, so let's wander down to the beach and see what's happening. There is no direct route from the station, however a tunnel runs underneath it that emerges onto the promenade just a short distance along from some beach huts. Access to the beach is achieved via a set of steps that lead down from the promenade. Wheelchair access is therefore difficult, but closer to the harbour, the lifeboat station's ramp, while still far from perfect, does offer an easier solution. The beach is very popular today, but nevertheless their eyes are quickly drawn to these two guys. If they are really intent upon launching that thing, then the lifeboat station is likely to get busy real soon. At least there are plenty of people to keep an eye out for them though. Mind you, in between getting that tan just right, having a swim and just plain relaxing, it's possible to wonder if anyone will have the time. But hey, we're here to relax, chill out and have a bit of fun. It certainly looks like we have a lot of like-minded company. Here's somebody else playing the risk game. That tail should be dropped. Another train is on the move, so interesting distractions aside, let's go back to the tracks and see just what is going on. With the single track line leading into the town once again free, a goods engine has taken advantage of this in order to visit the China Clay site. As you can see, the passenger train then departs, heading for Nevendon Bridge, where it picks up the main line. Once there, it will drop off its passengers before picking up a fresh load and making a return journey to Nevendon Sands station. The processing site is where China clay is received and then treated before being shipped back out to be used to produce pottery, etc. This involves a great deal of shoveling into sacks, and here we have 2 workmen doing just that. Alongside the China clay site is a small factory unit where materials and chemicals can be stored. Close to that, as you can see, there is a short siding which serves as a place where wagons can be both loaded and unloaded. Whilst we've been discussing the light industry that provides employment for the locals alongside tourism, something has caused a bit of a stir over in the harbour. So let's return over there and see what's going down. As we get closer, we come across the lifeboat station where 2 lifeboat men are preparing their craft so it's ready whenever that emergency call comes in. But it's not them that is causing so much interest, but rather what is in the water nearby. The tourist office make no promises, but upon occasion seals can be spotted swimming close to the harbour entrance. They are attracted by the shoals of mackerel that swim along the harbour's outer wall, a fact that's also known to many fishermen. The tide is on the make, and so the harbour is just beginning to fill up with water. As it is still quite shallow, a number of the fishing boats are waiting out at sea for high tide before attempting to enter it. Nevertheless, there's still plenty of things for the day tripper to see and enjoy. The brisk wind is also causing the sea to be a mite choppy, but it's a warm one, and to go with the bright sunshine, it's helping to ensure that everybody enjoys a day by the seaside. The suspicions of the station master that Albert, the driver of the goods train, had been on the sherbet was confirmed as it commenced its homeward journey. Both engines have now left Nevendon Sands, but via different tunnels from the ones that they first entered by. Accordingly, controlled automatically by the Arduinos and sensors, the sequence will be repeated, as first the Riverai Express returns to the station, and then the goods van, Albert of course permitting, back to the China Clay factory. The complete sequence of train movements ending when both engines are back in their original tunnels, at which point it simply recommences again. Simples. The majority of people come to the town simply to indulge in a sunbathe or perhaps a swim before, as the evening falls, making their way back home, but for some, the day holds other possibilities. The activities of the anglers have already been described, but a careful look along the promenade and around the harbour will reveal other pursuits and even in some cases dramas that are taking place. For example, a concerned mum has just spotted her missing child being comforted by some nuns. Another child lingers over the agonising decision as to what coloured balloon to pick, whilst a pair of lovers find a secluded spot to say hello to each other. Closer to the station, a street musician can be seen strumming his guitar, hoping for some shiny coins to join the glowing collection inside his guitar case. Meanwhile, back at the China Clay site, a workman takes his ladder back into storage at the end of his shift. Not that far away from him, another workman keeps busy as someone looks out of a nearby office window. Here we can see some rail maintenance engineers discussing the repairs that now need to be carried out upon the track following Albert's recent visit. So, while some relax, others work, but whatever, the experience of spending a day at Nevendon Sands will be one that few will forget, and indeed many will already be planning a return visit even as they wait to board their train home. Hopefully you too have enjoyed your introduction to Nevendon Sands. It was a challenge to build and many colourful phrases got expressed at times. However, I enjoyed every minute of it, and now that it's finished I cannot deny that there is a bit of an empty feeling. However, despair not, because plans are already firming up nicely for at least one, possibly two, other targets for my wood saw, welding torch and multimeter. So my break from layout building isn't likely to be a long one. Cheers!